I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, for the first time, the identity has been released of one of the dudes Jay returned to MUSC with. We now have confirmation that they booked the Airbnb for 3 nights and paid £120 in total to coincide with the exact timing of that NRG rave 20 miles away. But the part that stands out to me is A, the fact that Lucy tracked Jay down to MUSC and moreover went there, met the dudes Jay had gone home with and asked them where Jay was. Also, B, there was a big brawl at the end of the evening and we know Jay was involved in a gang scenario a few years earlier. Then there's also C, Jay did actually take a second Snapchat beside the one of him smoking, which further reveals, I think, his state of mind that morning. Now, before we get to the inferences we can draw from this, let's review what we've learned in more detail. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, please do. Welcome to the thousands of you. I think it's around 4,000 that have subscribed in the last couple of days. Lots more content on its way. There's a lot that I still want to get to, but I'm trying to also deal with current news. So if you're interested in that, please do subscribe. You can, if you're enjoying this analysis, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button and let's get started. Now, a lot of this information has come via an exclusive article published a few hours ago in the Mail Online. I'll put a link to that in the description. And this is an excerpt from that article. Quote, shortly after Jay disappeared, his friend Lucy Law, 19, told Mail Online how she had tracked the men down to their apartment using the Snapchat images, that's images plural, that Jay had sent her, arriving there at 11 a.m. 2 hours after he vanished. She also told Mail Online, I asked them where Jay was. They said he had gone out to look for cigarettes and then come back and he was leaving to try and get a bus back into town. Now, what's also interesting with that is this idea that he went out and then then a certain amount of time passed, then he came back, right? So one does wonder whether he did go out and then did he return to the Airbnb, and could the Airbnb be a crime scene? Now, one has to also wonder whether this is true in terms of did he go out to get cigarettes at about 7:30 in the morning? On the one hand, it could be true, right? On the other hand, if Jay had gotten specific smoking supplies from them, then they may, and when I say specific, you know what I'm implying, then they may want there to be a suggestion that he actually got his fix somewhere else, and perhaps he got something else besides smoking supplies from them. And so perhaps it's important for them to say, oh, well, he must have, he went out somewhere to get cigarettes. And maybe they're also aware of that Snapchat as well. And so they're trying to provide an explanation for that. But I'm not sure that that is likely, that he went out to buy cigarettes somewhere. And I'll tell you why. If he did go out and bought cigarettes somewhere, there would have to be an additional eyewitness who saw a kid up early in the morning, wearing shorts in the cold, buying smokes. I think that would have stood out. But no such witness has come forward. The only witness that has come forward is the lady at the Airbnb. She saw him twice. She spoke to him. She saw him, knew that he wanted to catch the bus, but saw him a little bit later walking. But nobody else did. The article goes on to note, little else is known about the two men other than that they are black, British, and in their late 30s or early 40s. The men were seen drinking Hennessy in bars and nightclubs in the party resort of Playa de las Americas during the 3-day rave. It is becoming clearer and clearer that these men were kind of locating themselves and basing themselves around the rave aspect. Now, on the one hand, it could be coincidental because the rave was that weekend. On the other hand, it might also be deliberate. But the fact is, this was on a weekend, and it could also just be that the area closest to MUSC, where someone could go out and have some fun, was Playa de las Americas, and there just happened to be a rave going on at that time. So we've reviewed some of this somewhat new information, and the question is now, what inference can we draw from this new information? I do think this opens the door to a potential foul play scenario. If I thought foul play had a 5% likelihood, that's since doubled. Why? Well, because we have a number of ingredients in play, in place now for foul play to make sense, certainly make more sense than it has until now. And let's go through them, 3 of them. Number 1, the motive. If Jay was involved in a fight, then someone might have felt aggrieved. We know, as I've said, that he's been involved in nighttime argy-bargy before. It might also explain why Jay headed far from his hotel, why he headed to MUSC. Perhaps it was to escape someone that he may have aggrieved at the party, especially if he was drunk or high or up to hijinks. Number 2, if Lucy could track Jay down, perhaps someone else could as well, but this suggests someone who had access to Jay's Snapchat, or else someone who had access to someone else who had access. Jay providing his location could have provided someone else, besides Lucy, with clues to his location. And then number 3, Jay took a second Snapchat of the view that he was seeing that morning, of the valley below MUSC. This image in particular would have given away his location, especially because he was on foot. So the first image, although it may have been tagged, would have probably just given a sense of, that he's up early in the morning, that he's smoking something, but the other one would have shown where he was. Now, if Brad or Lucy had told someone who had told someone else, they may well have known Jay was alone and vulnerable because he was on his own in a remote area. Now, although this makes a certain amount of sense on paper, and although the foul play likelihood has doubled in my mind, it still stands at a very unlikely probability of about 10%, with an accident being 90% more likely, in my opinion. Now, those are just probabilities, and obviously if I wanted to be a lot more popular on YouTube, because I know there are a lot of people who like the foul play scenario, then I would play that. But I simply don't believe it, and I'm not one of those channels that does that. Now, we also have to measure how this new information supports the accident scenario, and it does. The fact that Jay took a second Snapchat of his surroundings tells us the obvious, that he was quite spellbound by the natural beauty around him. Most people would be. And this may also be why he walked all the way to the lookout, heading in the wrong direction. In other words, he may not have been heading in the wrong direction. He may have been heading to see that view. And I think there may have been some signs suggesting that look out this way. And perhaps it looked closer than it was, and perhaps he assumed it would be a level road, but in practice it was probably a lot further than he imagined, and it was also a long, mostly uphill walk as well. That lookout is significantly higher than MUSC. Now, following his walk on Google Maps, which is an almost perfect U-shape, one can see how he would be tempted to return via a shortcut instead of the whole way that he had come. The next bus, as we understand it, was at 10 a.m., and there would be regular buses every 10 minutes from then onwards. It's also possible Jay misunderstood that the next bus was in 10 minutes rather than 10 a.m. that morning. And so after waiting for half an hour, waiting in shorts, probably shivering in the cold, he started heading off to keep warm in the wrong direction. Now, one possible reason why Jay was walking fast, besides that he was cold, was because he wanted to go and look at the view and be back in time to catch the bus at 10 a.m. Now, that again is assuming he did understand what he was told and nothing was lost in translation. So in other words, he's going in one direction to look at something, to take probably a nice photo, and hoping that he's got enough cell phone battery to do that, and only to get there and then to sort of run out at that critical moment. We also know that at 8:30 a.m., after half an hour of walking, Jay seemed concerned that he'd missed the bus, that he was in the middle of nowhere and had cut himself. Now, we know that he hadn't missed the bus at that point, but maybe he was right to be concerned that he might miss the bus, because it may be that he had walked and ran to get where he was and also taken shortcuts, and it may be that he sort of realized if he went back the same way, he was too tired now to repeat the same trip in reverse, and so he wouldn't be able to be back in time to catch the bus. This again assumes that he understood the next bus was at 10 a.m. If Jay struck across the wild terrain in a hurry, trying to be back at the Airbnb bus stop by 10 a.m., this attempt to hurry could have led to a serious stumble or perhaps a fall, and we know that he'd already hurt himself against a cactus. Now, he may also ultimately have run out of time and energy in the valley, gotten more lost. So once he went down into the valley, he started running out of time and energy. Remember, going downhill is one thing. He would have to climb back out of the valley as well, and that might be quite slippery. And that's perhaps when he got more lost and then abandoned the bus idea. It does seem like at some point he abandoned the bus idea, but I don't know if it was immediately. It may have been a little bit late in the morning, and then decided to follow the river. There is a river there between the lookout and MUSC, and he would have needed water anyway, so that may have drawn him towards the river, and then from there he may have made the decision to follow the river to the sea, and that would have taken him into the fabric of the Playa de MUSC Gorge. Now, although that's spectacular, and although there are numerous natural water sources, there are streams, springs, I think, this area is steep and treacherous if one leaves the path, and we know that he was doing that. It's in this gorge or the adjacent one to the north where I believe Jay ended up. By far the best clue remains Jay's final ping. And from the article, the Guardia Civil have worked tirelessly up in the mountains where Jay's last phone call was traced. The search was centered around this lookout point. And that last ping presented Jay, as I say, with a giant U-shape, a giant horseshoe to retrace or take a shortcut. Now, what would a young man, a 19-year-old, reckless, impulsive, light-hearted, into fun, perhaps a little bit high still, likely do next? Well, we know he left the path. So I've said in this video that I think the foul play scenario has got about a 10% chance. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.